My name is Dan Burkholder. I'm the author of iPhone Artistry from Pixic Press. And in this tiny tutorial for the iPhone, we're going to discuss some organizational issues. And that is organizing your photo apps on the iPhone so they're most approachable to you, so you can find them, so you can use them. It'll make all of your photography and image editing on the iPhone just that much more fun and easy. Now, starting out here, you'll notice I'm not using my big fat finger. I'm just using a stylus coming in here. This is my home screen, and I have very little that's photographic on the home screen. In the upper left, you'll see there's the camera app, the built-in camera app, which on the iPhone 4 and later does have HDR capability. And actually, I was just using that this morning. Then in the upper right, the photos, which is the photo albums, and I'll open that. And let me back up here on one that's all the way to the albums. And these are albums that are created in iPhoto and then synchronized over. Now I'm going to hit the home button, which is out of screen, and go back. So that's about all that's photographic on this screen. Otherwise, I have a lot of business. There's even a social folder that has a Facebook and some stuff in it. There's a productivity folder, a travel folder. But let's get over to what you're really interested in, and me too, the photography section. Let's scoot over. This is my first screen of photography apps, and first is underlined and in bold because there are other screens, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. We can scoot over. So here's my screen 2 peeking out. On my first screen is where I keep some of my real bread and butter photography apps. In the upper left, Pro Camera, a delightful app that lets you separate your tap to focus and tap to meter areas. Normally on the iPhone 3GS and later, wherever you tap when you're using the camera, it both meters and focuses at that point. With Pro Camera, you can focus on one point and meter on another, which really lets you control both your focus point and your exposure quite delightfully. And then there's some other my bread and butter apps like Iris Photo Suite and Filter Storm. But what I want to show you is some things that I have, for instance, like notice up here there's a whole HDR folder. Now when I say folder, if you've never done this before, you can organize apps by dragging them on one at top of one another. Let me open this folder first to show you what I mean by folder. When I tap on that, it opens that up, and you can see in that HDR folder, and there's the title right there, HDR, I have several True HDR, Pro HDR. Let's talk about how I created those. Now, to delete or to move, that is to rearrange apps, if you hold down on any app, and I'm holding down there for just a couple seconds with the stylus, notice how they start doing this little jiggle? That means we can relocate them. For instance, if I'd want to take this guy called Photo Studio, which is a great filter app, and for some reason move it over to there instead, I've just relocated those two guys. Or I could delete an app. If I hit that little X, I'll get a chance to delete that if it's an app that I no longer find that it is useful or it's just taking up space for nothing. And that's kind of redundant, isn't it? Now, don't worry. If you should accidentally delete one of your favorite apps, you can get it back. If you go to the App Store and try to, quote, repurchase it, the App Store keeps track of your purchases, will know that you've already purchased it. You'll be able to download it and install it free again. Now, that's really good. But be aware that if there are any in-app settings that you've made, and some of the apps will even have their own internal albums where you store images, you would lose all that associated data were you to delete the app. So be alert to that. So I'm not going to delete any of these, but let's talk about how I could create a folder. If I wanted these two, like Photo FX and Photo Studio, are both some of my favorite filtering applications. If I wanted to consolidate those, if I take this one and drag it on top of the other one, see how it kind of highlights? And a release, the operating system on the iPhone is smart enough to know that those are both photography apps. If you were to drag two business-related apps, one on top of the other, it would probably label it by default business. But I don't want to call this photography because I already have apps. So I might tap there and hit the little X here to delete the photography name and rename it Filters. Filters. And then when I hit done, now there's that folder, and I can back up, and I'll hit my home button so it stops the little dance. So now I've created an extra space. There, we're back. We're no longer having the jiggling apps. And I have this new folder called Filters, and they're the two that I just dragged in there. So that's pretty cool. And notice how I've organized mine. I have a whole folder of camera apps here, and I'll just show you how many. That there are 11. You can have up to 12 different things in any folder. That's the limit. So on this first screen, Pro Camera, Iris, Filter Storm, the things that I use day in and day out, some of my most important bread and butter, and once in a while some things that I'm just kind of playing with. For instance, there's an app down here called Sketch Agent, which does not really honor much resolution in the image, so odds are I'll probably be deleting that, or at least relegating it to lower priority on a later screen or something. But when I download a new app and I'm trying to play with it and learn some of its attributes, its pluses and minuses, I'll kind of keep it out on the root level before dumping it in a folder. On the second screen of my apps here, notice a photo apps, Photo Wizard, very valuable, and I have some other folders created here like Sun and Moon, and those are apps that let me follow the arc of the sun. For instance, Sun Seeker. We'll have different apps or different tutorials on a lot of these apps and go into depth on how they're used and how you can use this to organize. So if I go back there, beyond that, I just start getting into there's an image to ASCII app, which is just kind of fun, Fantasy Lens. And notice I have a bunch of other folders back here. Photo Fun, I'm not going to open that, but you can imagine it's just kind of superfluous stuff. Photo Transfer, now there's an important folder, and this has 12 different apps, some of which I don't really use anymore, but were kind of crucial when I was writing iPhone Artistry, the book, because I had to test a lot of these and find out which ones were really the best for wirelessly, for instance, moving apps from my iPhone over to a laptop or a desktop computer, or even for moving images back and forth from the phone to an iPad. And so that's where I keep those in the Photo Transfer app. So that's a nice organizational way. Here's a folder called Video Pano, and as you might expect, I keep video-related apps in there. I'm not much of a videographer, but it's nice to know where to go to find those. So now down here, this is what we call the tray, this bottom row of apps. I haven't touched upon this yet, and this is important. Notice that as I scoot from screen to screen of apps, the tray remains constant. And this may be old hat to some of you, but the tray is where you can put your most important things. And this is seasoned to taste. Notice that I have, to the left of the styles, I have the phone, and then my mail app, and trust me, there are many more than 179 unread emails in there. I'm always behind on email drastically. Safari, the web browser, and then the OddPod, the music playing app. So those are the four that I keep down in the tray because I want consistent accessibility to those four. Believe it or not, I actually do use the iPhone as a phone occasionally. Now you might want to put, say, Pro Camera. What if you find Pro Camera is just so indispensable to you and you don't listen to music that much? Well, let's just hold down on, say, this guy, the iPod. I'll move this up and out of the tray, and then I'll take Pro Camera and drag it down. In fact, it's so important, I'm going to put it on the left side. And then when I'm finished, I'll tap on the home button, which is right below screen, that's the only movable button on the front of the iPhone. And we stop losing the jiggling apps. And now I have Pro Camera down there, so no matter where I go on my other screens, down in the tray, of course, Pro Camera will always be there. So this is a really nice way. I think if you honor this kind of scheme, organizing things, I have an app for grungers. I have a folder for painting, mark and release, where I put watermarks on. Even have a model release program in there, one for layers, one's for textures. So you're getting the plot. You can certainly organize these the way that makes sense to you, the way your brain works, the way your hand works, the way your apps work. But come up with a scheme, because trust me, you're going to have lots of apps. In fact, just to show you something, I'm going to go into my settings and tap General, just to give you an idea, and then About. I have on my iPhone, under Applications, 322 apps. Now, obviously, if I tried to keep all those out on the root level, since this only holds 16 apps per screen, not counting our tray, which remains constant, like we said, that would be a lot of screens, more screens than I could have. So it's actually a must that if you have a lot of apps, which you will as an iPhone photographer, you're going to be collecting an assortment. Some of them will be frivolous and just fun, and others will be real important meat and potatoes applications that you use to both capture and to stylize the images so you can make the images from your iPhone match your creative vision. So thank you very much for watching.